With the USFL coming back this year, I thought, let's talk about the defunct Oakland Invaders. The Invaders were part of the original USFL, and they started in 1983 and played at the Oakland Coliseum. And, you know, the name is not a coincidence to it rhyming with the Raiders. They called themselves the Invaders. They wanted to kind of draw attention of the Oakland fans that had recently lost the Raiders to Los Angeles, and the Oakland Invaders were kind of there to fill that void. And the USFL was, you know, trying to compete with the NFL. Unfortunately for them, you know, it didn't last too long, but it's coming back this year, so that's interesting. But the Oakland Invaders, you know, very interesting team. They were well known, you know, in the community. They had cool uniforms, and, you know, they were definitely an interesting team. They only played for 3 seasons in the USFL, and they made the playoffs in 2 of those 3 seasons. And they actually made the championship game in one of those seasons as well. I'll talk about that in a moment. But, you know, when the Raiders moved, it was devastating for Oakland. It was heartbreaking. And so for football to come back, you know, temporarily at least, it was cool. And yeah, so they started out in 1983. They folded in 85, so that's 3 seasons. And yeah, so let's talk about 1983. So in this season, they finished with a 500 record of 9-9. It was an interesting first season, and the attendance actually wasn't really that bad. I mean, the thing with this league that was really weird is there was a lot of disparity between certain stadiums. For example, the team from Oklahoma, they played at Tulsa Stadium at, you know, where the University of Tulsa is, which is way smaller than the Oakland Coliseum. So it was hard to tell that, you know, it was going well at first, right? It probably would have been hard. And so, yeah. So in that season, yeah, they finished 9-9, and they were in a very weak Pacific division, so they were able to manage a playoff spot and win the division. But they did lose to the eventual league champions, the Michigan Panthers. And the Panthers were probably one of the most successful USFL teams ever because, for one, they're sharing a market with the Detroit Lions, and the Lions, we all know, aren't super good. You know, they never made a Super Bowl, and the Panthers were very successful in this league, you know, winning a championship in the USFL. They had good attendance. I mean, the championship game had 60,000 fans in it in 1983, and so, you know, that was the largest crowd for any game in 1983 for USFL. But yeah, the Panthers, interesting team, but the Invaders lost, unfortunately, in their first season, but they made the playoffs. In 1984, it was probably their weirdest season because they lost their first 9 games and then were able to manage to win 7 of their last 9. It was an 18-game season, which is interesting because that's, of course, much longer than back then the NFL's length of their season. In this season, you know, it was interesting. They were led by running back Eric Jordan, who really turned the team around. I mean, they lost those first 9 games, and then they win 7 of 9, but it still wasn't enough to make the playoffs. That was the only season they missed the playoffs. Attendance in this season significantly declined. Almost 8,000 fewer fans per game than 1983. So it was definitely, you know, signs that I don't know, you know, if this league is going to last much longer. It was declining, and you know, they lost in that season a lot, but, you know, still they were a decent team. 1985 was their final season, and it was also their best season. In this year, they actually made it to the league championship against the Baltimore Stars. That was definitely a really cool season for the Invaders. They were really good in this season. They won most of their games. The only teams they lost to were the Gamblers, Breakers, Stallions, Outlaws, and of course Stars in the finals. But, you know, it was their best season, and that was their glory, right? That's how they kind of got well known. But unfortunately, the USFL would fold not too long after. They would also fold, of course. You know, they were trying to, you know, the USFL was interesting because they were trying to reach a deal for a merger with, you know, to kind of expand, but it never happened. And, you know, it was just not a kind of well-run league when it was all said and done. The attendance was declining. I mean, the Oakland Invaders in their opening game had 23,000 fans attend the game, opposed to their opening game in their first season, they had close to 50,000 fans attend the game. So they were a very strange team. They were interesting, and the USFL is coming back this year. Like I said, there's really no teams on the West Coast, so we won't have a resurgence of the Invaders, but it's definitely, you know, interesting. So yeah, just to recap, their first season they went 9-9, lost the divisional round. Their second season they went 7-11, and they were 4th in the Pacific. And in 1985 they were 13-4, and they lost the USFL championship. So yeah, that's the Oakland Invaders, another defunct Oakland team. So let me know your thoughts. I'll see you guys later, and yeah, peace out.